Hello folks, Jack from Peach Guitars here. Welcome to A Tale of Two Tones. Today I'm going to spend a bit of time delving into the tones of Jack White. But before I do so today, please let me remind you to like this video, comment down below with your thoughts, and make sure that you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. Okay, so thank you for joining me on another episode of Tale of Two Tones. This series is basically where I decide to try and dissect what have made such crucial tones throughout the development of an artist's career, what they are. So I want to start with some of their earlier tones. So in the case of Jack White, you're going to hear some of those White Stripes era tones, and then moving forward to see how they progressed not only musically but also tonally and the way that their rig evolved to facilitate the new styles of music that they're playing. So I'm going to focus a little bit more on his Raconteurs era as well as his solo stuff a little bit later on in the video. Okay, so Jack White is one of the real kind of leading figureheads of experimental guitar playing these days, and he has been for several decades now. Back in the day with the White Stripes, he was really known. Obviously, they were just more or less a pop rock duo, and he was known for creating a lot of really cool sonic textures to do with fuzz pedals and really kind of inexpensive, unique pawn shop type guitars with big loud high headroom amplifiers, and that was really a great sound for back then. And it's interesting to see how he progressed into more of a band kind of a context. So now he plays not only with the Raconteurs but also with his own solo projects, and it's usually within a larger band context. So one thing that is consistent throughout the whole of his career is his playing style. Jack White's got an incredible rhythm style. He's very aggressive on the right hand, and that really comes through with whatever gear. It's really about his technique and the way that he attacks the instrument. It's really just about really digging in and letting the guitar and the amp do most of the heavy lifting for you, really. But it has been known that in more of his recent works, he has there's a lot more light and shade going on. There's a lot more dynamic in terms of the recording processes, at least. So you hear on their studio records that they are a little bit more polished, a little bit tighter as band units now, and that his playing has kind of changed in that way as well. The gear that he's used has formed more around a kind of a band tone as opposed to a solo guitar tone. So as usual for these Tale of Two Tones videos, what you're going to hear in this video is two different rigs, Rig A and Rig B. Rig A referring to the earlier days, Rig B referring to the more modern, up-to-date kind of days. And as usual, I'm not referring to any particular recorded or live tones. I'm just trying to get an approximation of each to the best of my ability and to use some of the stuff that we've got here for sale in the shop to try and get as close as I can. Okay, so here we go with Rig A. So what I've done here is piece together something that I think is most reminiscent of Jack White's earliest tones. So this is probably the sound that most people will know Jack White for. It's certainly the sound that I think he was longest associated with, because throughout the course of playing with the White Stripes, I don't think he really changed that much. Stylistically, the band did change, but his gear and his setup really kind of remained largely unchanged. The great thing about Jack White's playing is that he's an incredibly dynamic guitar player in the truest sense of the word, like those great old blues guys that he took so much inspiration from. I think really what he wanted to do was just have a rig that provided him this huge tone that he had to use in the White Stripe to fill up so much sonic bandwidth. So that's why he was known to use, I believe, Fender Twin reverbs as well as those old Silvertone amplifiers as well, which just had huge headroom that allowed him to pile on just a couple of effects with his airline guitar, really simple guitar. I'm using a Revolta Mondata guitar today to try and get some of that vibe of like the mini humbucker tone. Just the bridge pickup really is all I was using. I've got a Fender Hot Rod Deluxe in place of some of those larger amps today. Loads of reverb on the amp, which is kind of crucial to the tone. I think really the amps played a large part in that tone just by having so much headroom, as I say, but also by caving in just the right way when he would step on his pedals. So to also simulate some of that tone for this particular setup, I've got the Jhs Twin 12 pedal, which I'm sure people will be aware of. This is JHS's take on emulating those old Silvertone amps. So it's pretty much Jack White's tone in a box. I've also got an MXR Carbon Copy Mini just for a slapback delay, which is something that I think Jack White probably used more so in the studio, maybe just to give a little bit more space. I'm also using a Line 6 HX effects, as we tend to do all the time, just to implement a few different random effects. I'm really only using it today to kind of emulate the whammy sound, so that's the octave up whammy sound that he was using. I'm using that with a Dunlop Volume Mini expression pedal. And I've also got, for the core fuzz tone, which he was best known for, instead of an Electro Harmonics Big Muff, I'm using the Jhs Muffuletta pedal as well on the triangle muff setting. So it's got quite a nice strong mid-range, again important to have a big tone for this single guitar setup. And I'm also using the HX effects to control the mix of the fuzz. So you'll hear sometimes it sounds very, very distorted when I've got the mix up full. And I've also got it where I've pulled the mix back to about 25%. Now the reason I've done that is because you hear a lot of the times on record, I think Jack White used multiple amps together, maybe some with and without fuzz, and the combination of the two meant that you not only had the big fuzz tone, but you also had the clarity of the dry amp. So I've tried to kind of approximate that here just by using the mix facility on the HX effects. Yep, so there's not really too much else to go into with this rig. As I say, it's very simple but very effective. Okay, so on to rig B. So something different here that I've noticed that Jack White's tended to do later on in his career is move away from those solo guitar tones. When he moved out from the White Stripes and went on to form the Raconteurs and onto his solo stuff more recently as well, he's kind of played more in a band context, and I think that his rig has been informed by that decision. Most people will know in more recent years that Jack White has used quite a bevy of different guitars. He's moved away from some of those old Harmonies and K guitars and the Airline models that he used to use, and more into a kind of more of a contemporary lane, playing a lot of Gretsch guitars and playing even stuff like EVH guitars and Music Man St. Vincent signature guitars, loads of really weird off-the-wall models that he's obviously just used for particular tracks or particular vibes for certain albums and things like that. And that's great to see. That's really kind of the mark of him just using these tools in a very artistic way. But for rig B, I wanted to piece together something that was a little bit more familiar, kind of going back to the late noughties, the Raconteurs era, when he was playing mostly Gretsch guitars, I believe. So I've got this Player's Edition Jet to kind of simulate some of those double jet and even the triple jet guitar sounds that he had. I know that he built kind of a third pickup into a Gretsch duo jet and had a micro amp built in. So he's always one for these kind of wacky guitars with just something a little bit different. But this particular Gretsch does a great job of getting that tone and that vibe. I'm plugging this more or less straight into a Fender Pro Junior, which is a great little amp. Again, totally different to what I had in rig A. He hasn't really exclusively used smaller amps recently, but to my ear at least, and the stuff that I've heard, his tone has been formed around more of a natural amp tone. So rather than relying on the fuzz pedals that he was known to do in the White Stripes days, he's really more of just kind of a guitar to an amp kind of a guy with a few choice effects. So for example, I'm using from Game Changer Audio the Plasma pedal, which is their distortion unit. I believe he does have a signature pedal with them at the moment as well, so it kind of seems fitting to use that for that very gated, fuzzy distortion kind of sound that you hear on certain riffs and certain parts. But the most important thing I want to get across with this rig is that it's a little bit more textural. And I think that his playing has changed that way as well. You notice that he starts to play some more involved and kind of articulate chord shapes and kind of arpeggiated chords as well. And this guitar really lends itself well to that because it's such a bright, articulate sounding instrument. In terms of any other effects, I've only got reverb coming from a Line 6 HX Effects once again, and I'm using the MXR Carbon Copy Mini from before for a little bit of a longer delay, but it's very subtle. It just helps to fatten up the sound a little bit. It's not really about going for specific album or recorded tones, but this is kind of going to put you in the ballpark of where I personally can take Jack White's music from now as he stands as an artist right now. Okay, so there we are, guys. Thank you very much for watching another Tale of Two Tones. This is quite an interesting one to do because Jack White is a very hard player to nail down. He's actually used so many different pieces of gear, particularly guitars. The most important thing here is the attitude of his playing and his songwriting ability. So that's it. Thank you for joining me for this video. I look forward to seeing you in the next Tale of Two Tones, whoever that might be for. Until next time, though, take care of yourselves. And if you want to find out any more information about any of these products, you can do so by going to peachguitars.com. So I'll see you next time.